Hi there, this is Nicole Birkholzer from Mindful Connections, bringing you some horse logic. Hoping to bring a little sparkle to your day, because here it is raw today. We don't even have 60 degrees and it's raining and it feels like winter and it's only the beginning of September. However, I think this is a very important topic, which I almost say every time, but this one really is. What to consider when you move your horse. And moving might mean that you're moving your horse from one barn to another, or it might mean that you have sold your horse and you're moving it to a new person, which would be obviously a new place, or if you bought a horse and you're bringing a horse to your place, and that would obviously be a move. Let me see. Cicely, you want to come? You want to hang out? Oh, no, she doesn't. Okay. So, here are some things that I have noticed are really, really important for our horses to consider. First of all, when you move a horse, always remember or look where your horse lives right now. So for our horses right now, they're living in an open stall. They can go in and out as much as they want. They have a pasture to themselves and they can, choose what to do. And on a day like this, obviously they're choosing to stay in for most of the day. Now other horses are stalled a lot throughout their day, meaning mostly overnight and maybe even 4 hours during the day. So if you have a horse that is stalled, that's obviously a very different lifestyle. So now when you move your horse, you need to think about, is this new place relatively similar to what my horse is used to? If it is not, that could bring a lot of issues upon you. Because if I would take a horse like Shauna here, for example, and I would make her stay in a stall all of a sudden for 12 hours, for 8 hours, or for even more, she would certainly be not that happy and excited about that, because she's used to a lot of liberty and a lot of freedom. If you have, however, a horse that was stalled for most of the day and night, to bring a horse like that to our property and say like, hey, now you have all the liberty and freedom like a real horse, that horse might be way out of his league and might be very challenged by a big environment that needs to be conquered and looked at and experienced and explored. It can be actually very overwhelming. And though we say, but isn't that what horses are used to? Horses live out in the wild. Yeah, they do. But by us domesticating them, we actually kind of limit their experience a lot. And if we now, by limiting the experience, take away a lot of the natural tendencies of the horse, we also need to then, if we change the environment again to a much more open environment, we need to give the horse a chance to transition into that again and get him used to the big environment. I remember when we actually moved Chana, Cutter, and back then some of our other horses, Oki and Kayla and Carrie, from a 3-acre property, I believe we had, to a 50-acre property where we had 12 open acres. They were initially like, wow, excited, and they trotted through the pastures. And then I noticed they all of a sudden, often right after morning breakfast and they explored the pastures, they came back to the barn and they all huddled in the big dairy barn together. And I was kind of like, why are you not enjoying the big open fields? And Oki showed me that he was back then the leader. He was exhausted from just taking in the property, exploring it, getting a sense for the environment, noticing all the wildlife tracks and everything that he now as the herd leader had to kind of take in and process to keep his herd safe. He was overwhelmed, and by 10:30 in the morning he needed a nap. And so we need to consider those types of things. So if you are planning, and there's actually I want to tell you one other example. A friend of mine has also a big pasture where her horses live, and she at one point offered one of her horses to a therapeutic riding center, and that therapeutic riding center did not have a lot of turnout at all. The horses had very small little, almost like balconies attached to their stalls, and that was it. And her horse, after 3 weeks, was like, I can't do this anymore. She was so crammed in and couldn't move the way she was used to moving that she started to show some behaviors that were not really desirable in a therapeutic riding center, and she had to go home. So really paying attention to where your horse comes from and where your horse is going when you move a horse is really important. Now, that said, the next thing that's really important is to tell your horse what's going on. So if you are moving a horse, share that information with your horse. Explain to your horse, literally, verbally. I talk about that all the time, that horses do understand and they do listen. Do they speak English? They speak intention. They understand when we come with an intention. So I would tell my horse, wow, we're going to go to a bigger place and we're going to, have much more freedom and you have much more space. Or I would tell my horse, wow, we're moving to a new place and there is not as much space, but there are new horses to meet and there is certainly your own little paddock and you have a stall and somebody will come in the morning and feed you at night and all that stuff. Inform your horse before you move your horse, so that the horse, by you sharing it and you actually picturing in your mind what that new place looks like, your horse already can gain some information through that, so that the transition is a little bit easier than just to pick her up, get her over there and drop her off. That's really challenging for a lot of animals because we are not giving them any understanding of what's to come, and it's then more or less a shock. And I've seen horses that literally come to a barn and are like, what the heck happened to me? Why am I here? Why was I dropped off? When by sharing with them what's going on, you're already easing the transition. Now, thirdly, once your horse is in the new place, and let's just say you picked a place that is not quite what your horse was used to, but it is certainly close enough that it is not a dramatic change, try still to give your horse a little bit of what he or she used to know. So let's just say if you always fed your horse 3 times a day and the new barn only feeds twice a day, make the extra effort and come for a while and bring extra food at lunch, or ask the barn manager to give a little extra food at lunch, just so that your horse's nervous system is not dealing with new environment, new herd members, right? Because they're new people, new setting, new schedule, and all that, plus a new food schedule. Food is really a big deal for horses, to keep your food consistent. And so the more you can keep a few things the way the horse was used to, the less stress you put on your horse's system. Now, another thing to do is, if you like essential oils or if you like flower essences, offer some of them already to your horse maybe before you leave, and then when the horse is at the new place, something like lavender, something calming might be really helpful for your horse. A couple drops in the water bucket, and ask somebody who knows about these things what you could do to support your horse with those natural or some homeopathic supplements to keep your horse a little bit more at ease. Another thing is, let's just say you have an extreme situation. Your horse is stalled and it's going to a place where there is 24-hour turnout, and it's your only option, and this is the way it goes. Give your horse a chance to, at least in the beginning, have some kind of smaller enclosure where he or she can go at night, so that the horse is not used to a little stall and then is pushed into a big pasture by himself or by herself to conquer this big new piece of property. They can go out for a few hours and explore and get excited about things, but then give them a smaller space, maybe a smaller paddock where they can just go like, okay, I'm safe here right now. I don't need to pay attention to everything else. I can just, be in my little 20 by 20, or maybe it's a shed, like even a shed like this. Sometimes what I've done is I just take a fence panel and made it smaller for horse that needed, maybe to be laid up or, kept separate for some reason. And offer that for the horse to create a transition. So when the horse, after a few weeks, has taken in the property and has gotten used to the new horses and has learned about the new routines, you can then say like, all right, I think he's ready now to be actually out 24/7. But don't do it right away, because horses' systems, as you know, are extremely sensitive, and by not helping them keep the stress and the tension down, you're inviting things like colic and laminitis and any of those stress-related diseases that will make it just so much harder on the horse and on you when it comes to, getting used to a new place. So again, the three things are, first of all, be very aware where your horse is and try to find a place that offers something as similar as possible to what you and your horse are used to. Number two, tell your horse what's going to happen. And number three, once the horse is moved, make the transition as easy as possible for the horse so that you both can chill. Because if you're anything like me, if I were to drop my horse off at a new place, I would be a nervous wreck, hoping that the horse is well. And so I would want to try to make everything as easy for them so that I can actually sleep at night. And I bet you are very similar to that. So figure out the best place based on what your horse knows. Figure out, tell your horse, and then figure out how to make the transition easier through extra food routines, to providing a smaller space if necessary, and or if it's the other way around actually, if your horse is used to a large space and is now more confined, come and take your horse for walks, right? In my last video, and I'm gonna put that down here again, take your horse for walks, let your horse explore the place, because if your horse is used to doing it all on his own, exploring a big piece of property, all of a sudden being locked up in a smaller space and not being able to get to any of the nooks and crannies and corners on a new property is going to be very stressful. So then take him for a walk. Let her graze on the side of other pastures, just so the horse can acclimate itself and have an easier transition. So really big deal for horses, something to think about, and happy moving if that's what's on your schedule in the next few weeks. All right, I'll see you next time. Nicole, Mindful Connections with a little bit of horse logic.